Hello everyone, I'm Anastasia. Welcome back to another session with me. So in our previous session, as we have discussed about segregation as well as transportation of waste, in this session, we are going to discuss about the disposal of this hospital waste. So here there are various techniques which you can adopt before you dispose the waste of the hospital. So the first technique which we are going to discuss is the chemical disinfectant. So here, even before we dispose the waste off, sometimes there are certain materials which needs to be disinfected. So here, for example, solid materials which are made up of rubber, plastic and metallic items such as the IV sets, the blood bag, the catheter, the needles, as well as the gloves must be disinfected before they are sent to the final disposal, right? Because these are materials which may be contaminated or which may be infected with the pathogens from the body of the patient. So here, when there are certain materials which needs to be disinfected before they are being disposed, then it can be done by this chemical disinfection. This chemical disinfection is also an appropriate method in order to treat waste such as blood, urine, stool, or even the hospital sewage. So this is one of the methods that we can do in order to properly dispose the waste, which is the chemical disinfectant. And then the second one is the thermal measures. So in this method, what happens is that those shredded infectious waste will be exposed to the high pressure steam like autoclaving. Why? Because here 80% of the liquids which is present in the waste will be dried, and in this manner the waste will reduce to 20 to 30% in weight. However, when we perform these thermal measures, as I've said, that it means exposing the shredded infectious waste to the high pressure steam, right? So it is very important that adequately trained operators or technician must be the one to perform this procedure. The next one is microwave irradiation. So here this technique is also very effective in sterilizing the infected or even the disposable waste, and this technique is same just like autoclaving or hydroclaving. And why do we do this? We do this because most of the microorganisms will get easily destroyed by the actions of the microwave. So this microwave irradiation is also similar to what autoclaving or hydroclaving is. The only difference is that here most of the microorganisms will easily be destroyed, and also this is one of the method which helps in sterilizing the infected or the disposable waste. The next one is incineration. So incineration is a high temperature dry oxidation process that reduces the organic and the combustible waste into an inorganic and into an incombustible waste. When we incinerate the waste, it helps to reduce the weight as well as the volume of the waste. And this method is mainly used for those materials which cannot be reused, recycled, or which cannot be disposed of by landfill treatment. So in simple words, we can say that incineration is the process whereby we will be burning all these materials which cannot be reused, recycled, or which cannot be disposed of by landfill treatment. So here what happens is that by the use of high temperature and dry oxidation process, it helps to reduce the organic and the combustible waste into an inorganic and an incombustible waste. And these materials will be burned in such a manner that nothing else should be left except for sterile ashes. So here what happens in this incineration is that all those materials which cannot be reused, recycled, or disposed of will be incinerated, which means they will be burned until they are left with sterile ashes. So here there are three kinds of incineration. The first one is the single chamber furnaces. So this is the most commonly used as well as the most cheapest unit, whereby these materials will be incinerated, that is they will be burned, and then they'll stop until it has been left into sterile ash. However, there is the second one known as the double chamber pyrolytic incineration. So here from the name itself you can understand that there will be two chambers, right? So one chamber is the one in which all these materials will be kept and burned into ashes, And when they will be burned, there will be flue gases which will be there, right? Which will be present because these materials are being burned. So with the use of this double chamber incinerator, what we can do is that in the second chamber, these flue gases are also incinerated before they are being sent to the air pollution control device. Because in this manner, these flue gases will first be cleaned before they are being dispersed into the atmosphere. The next one is the rotatory kiln. So this composed of a rotating oven and a post-combustible chamber. And this is especially used to burn down the chemical waste which consists of the cytotoxic drugs or even of the pharmaceuticals. So these are the three kinds of incineration, which is the single chamber furnaces, the double chamber, pyrolytic incinerator, and the rotary kiln. So I hope you have got a clear understanding of what incineration means. So what are the various ways that needs to be so which are the ways which needs to be incinerated? Here the first one is the human waste, the animal waste, the dressing waste, as well as the laboratory waste. Why? Because human waste, right, it can consist of the human tissues, of the body organs, or of the parts of the body. So these cannot be disposed of with the process of chemical disinfection or even by autoclaving, right? So here these human waste, these animal waste, these waste which has been collected from the lab or even the dressing materials, these needs to be incinerated. However, there are also certain materials which cannot be incinerated, and these consist of the pressurized gas container, the radioactive or the photographic waste, the waste which contain of large amount of reactive chemicals, halogenated plastics such as the polyvinyl chloride, waste which contains mercury or cadmium, for example thermometer, as we know that thermometer consists of a mercury, right? So these waste cannot be incinerated. And also the seal ampules as well as the ampules containing heavy metals. So all of these materials we should make sure that we should never incinerate it. Why? Because incineration means burning, right? Burning those materials into ashes. So here we cannot burn these materials which consist of mercury, which consists of highly reactive chemicals, those pressurized gas container, the radiographic or even the photographic waste. Because as I've said that incineration is the process which is only used for those materials which cannot be reused, recycled or disposed by the landfill treatment. So here if those materials can be reused, recycled or can be disposed of by this landfill treatment, then incineration will never be opted. And the next one is the inertization. So this is the process whereby those waste will first be mixed with the cement and other substances before they are being disposed. Because by mixing these waste with cement or certain other substances, it helps to reduce the risk of migrating toxic substances into the groundwater or even into the surface water. So after they have made this homogeneous mixture, a cube will be prepared at the site, and only after this has been done, then they will finally transfer or transport these waste to the final disposal site. And the last technique is the landfill. So here besides incineration, landfill is one of the most important technique which will be mainly used in order to dispose these biomedical waste. This is also a quite effective technique in order to dispose this waste. However, practice of disposal of these waste in the landfills must be appropriately done, because open dumping of these healthcare waste is not recommended, because if these waste are not properly dumped, if these waste are not properly being disposed, then it can lead to various problems such as acute pollution problem, fire, high risk of disease transmission, as well as an open access to scavengers and animals. That is why it is very important that whenever we choose to dispose the waste by the use of this landfill treatment, we need to make sure that it is properly done, and those people who are doing it must be properly trained on how to do it, because if it is not appropriately done, then it can lead to various problems, especially in a developing country like India. a sanitary landfill observing certain rules is an acceptable choice for the dumping of these biomedical waste. So here there are a few guidelines that we need to follow whenever we choose this method for disposal of the waste. The first one is that you should choose a specific designated place along with the authoritative permission. And whenever you are choosing the site for dumping the waste, you should make sure that it is far from the residential areas as well as from the water sources, because if it is near to those, then it can pollute and also lead one to suffer from many diseases. There should be an appropriate engineering preparation. There should be an easy transportation facility which must be present to transport these waste properly and effectively. And whenever these waste has been disposed in this landfill, we should make sure that they should daily cover these waste. And in order to make sure that the waste is fully covered and covered in a very good manner, daily supervision needs to be done. As well as a constant supervision is required in order to keep the workers in track and to make sure that they are doing their work effectively. That is, they are disposing the waste correctly and they are also covering these waste in a daily basis. So these are the various, disposal technique which you can use depending on the materials which you have to dispose. Moving on to the next, that is the nurse's roles and responsibilities in biomedical waste management. Here, as a nurse, you need to make sure that you disinfect the waste before they are being disposed of, so that these waste will no longer be a source of the pathogenic microorganism. You must make sure that you reduce the bulk in order to reduce the requirements for their storage as well as for their transportation. As a nurse, you should also try your best to manage the waste in such a manner that it looks aesthetic to see. That is, we should try to make the waste unrecognizable. So here, for example, if the waste is too much, then what you can do is that you can tie the bag, you can label it, and then you can send for disposal, or you can also place it in one small corner where at the end of the day you will be able to take all the plastic bags at the same time and dispose them off. As a nurse, you should also make sure that you make the recyclable things unusable. For example, by damaging the needles or by cutting the syringes, you can make them unusable, because here, if you don't do it, then people might still use it, right? It might be reused. So in order to prevent this from happening, you should make sure that you make the reusable items unusable. Recycling infectious plastic waste can only be considered after adequate disinfection or sterilization has been done. So here you must make sure that before you recycle these plastic waste, it has been properly disinfected or being properly sterilized. As a nurse, you should also make sure that those items which can be recycled must first be properly sterilized and disinfected before they are being recycled. So here, since I've said that you should try your best to make the recyclable items unreusable, right? So here, whenever you are using the gloves, the needle, the syringe, you should make sure that it should be properly mutilated after it has been used in order to prevent people from recycling or repacking it. And also, since we have discussed about the color coding in our previous session, right, where we've come to know that there is the black, the blue, the yellow, the white, and also the red bags where we will be disposing the waste, right? So here we must make sure that all these bags, all these containers must be present in each and every ward, so that the staff will be able to properly dispose of the waste materials in time and also at the proper places. And as I have said that the sharp objects such as needles, scalpels, blades must only be disposed in the white container, right? So as a nurse, you must make sure that you dispose all these sharp objects in this white container itself, because these are the ones which will be. So as I've said, that any sharp objects such as the needles, the blades, the scalpels must only be disposed of in the white bag or in the white container, right? So here, whenever you are disposing of any sharp objects, you must make sure that you dispose of in the puncture resistant white container in order to prevent any injury which can occur from these objects. And here we must also make sure that these needles, blades must first be autoclave, hydroclave or chemically disinfected before they are being disposed. And also we have seen that around 40% cases of needle prick injury usually occur to the nurses, right? So why does this occur? This mainly occur because after any procedure has been performed for the client, these nurses, they again try to recap it, right? So when they try to recap these needles, then they may get a prick, and this can lead them to suffer from needle prick injury, right? That is why we've seen that 40% cases are there, and in order to prevent this from occurring, it is advised that it is not needed to recap these needles after you have performed this procedure, right? So here, if it is not needed to recap, then what you can do is that you can directly go and dispose them off. It will prevent you from the needle stick injury that can occur, and as well as it can also save your time. If there is reusable glass syringes, or if there is needle aspirates, then what you can do is that with the use of the hydrochloric solution, you can immerse them in the flat tray for 20 minutes and rinse it under the running water. And as a nurse, since we know that there are various materials which needs to be sent first for chemical disinfection before they are being disposed of, right? So here we need to make sure that before we send them for disposing it, we need to make sure that these has been chemically disinfected first, and then only we can send them. And also when we are doing this, we should make sure that we change the chemical solution frequently, or at least once or twice a day. And whenever you handle or whenever you decontaminate these materials, you need to make sure that you wear your gloves and your mask. And if splashing is expected, then you can also wear your aprons and your boots. So these are the various roles and responsibilities in biomedical waste management. So now here we have come to the end of this topic. In today's session, we have discussed about the various disposal technique that we can use, as well as about the roles and responsibilities of a nurse in the biomedical waste management. So now here we have completed with this topic. I hope you have got a clear understanding of what biomedical waste management is. I hope you have got a clear understanding of what does it mean, what are its types, why is it important, what are the various categories of waste, what are the hazards that are associated with the hospital waste, how can you segregate the waste, what are the color coding, what is the categories of waste management, as well as how can you transport the waste, and what are the various techniques you can use while you are disposing these waste materials. And as a nurse, yes, we've also discussed about the various roles and responsibilities that you must perform when you are managing these biomedical waste, right? So I hope you have got a clear understanding of this topic. I'll be meeting you in another session. Until then, have a good day. Thank you.